Hi everyone, I'm just ready to start on another part of the body, and we're going to look at the upper back, well, mid back sort of portion. And we did the pecs last week, so this time we'll go to the backside, and I'm going to work on the Latissimus Dorsi, which is, if you can see this cursor, it's this big muscle that covers, well, probably seems like 2/3 of the back here. And it will insert up on the front of the humerus bone, but we'll get right into that shortly. I don't want to blurb on too much in the intro. Notice myself, I don't like all the fluffing about when people start videos, so I'm more of a person that just likes to get into it. So hopefully you'll get something good from this, and we'll get into a bit of the layering also, because see how complex it gets around that scapula and armpit. So we'll sort things out through there. Okay, so one thing I wanted to bring up also is proportions. Usually see this, I'll use a head count. So if I've got a head like this, chin, top of the head, I'll say this is around the base of the scapula, okay? And from that base, I'll have another roughly another head's length, and that'll get to the scapula, to the sacrum, sorry, and another head length will get to the bottom of the buttock area, or the crotch on the front side. Okay, so this is something handy to remember. 1, 2, 3, 4. People use different proportions, but this is generally something nice and simple I use. And it'll come in handy when you're doing your figure drawings. Not every person's going to stand up straight for you like that, but this is something good to keep in the back of your head. What else is there? There's also, say, let's get the different color here so I can show you the width of the head. So say you've got that as your width. Another width over could be the end point of the top shelf of that scapula and where the humerus comes out, okay? Also, well, that's pretty much it. What else have I got here? I think also this should be around the width of the waist too. And remember, again, everyone's pretty much different. Some people could have a thinner waist area. Some people could have broader shoulders. So this is just a general guide, so don't use it for every single person that you draw. But if you're doing just your own imaginary figures, go for it, just for practice sake. So I'll get rid of that now, and we'll get into the lats. Now, you can see here, I'll draw on the side. So I'll use the rectangle to represent the rib cage, and I'll have the hip area down here. Say this is the sacrum. Sacrum's a little triangular bit at the base of your spine. Okay, that's your spine. And you've got the pubic bone. also got, we'll sort of go with what we see on the demo there. I'm seeing a lot more of this side of his back because he's angled towards the front right. I'm going to put the humerus bones in. I'll throw in the scapulae. Okay. Now, it looks complex, this area, but let's just focus. I'll put the humerus bone as just a stick figure. Let's focus on the lats. So on the front of your arm, lat will generally start on the front of the arm, and then it bends and comes through, meets on the backbone there, and it does the same thing again around to the other side. Okay, what you'll notice, it'll cover part of the base of the scapula. Something important to remember, you can see it here. It's covering that teres major, and the shoulder blade would probably end up around down there. Now, where does it go? Where does it end up? The sacrum, okay? You've got the muscle, it goes from there and makes its way down towards the outer part of the sacrum, okay? Now, another important thing, I think it's called the aponeurosis. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but if you want to explain in the comments, go ahead. See how you've got this white sort of, not a ligament, maybe tendons? Well, it could be ligament. No, it's tendon, I'm guessing. Or just aponeurosis. That's what it's the technical term, okay? So this is all this white aponeurosis type thing. And it's got a striation. If I'm looking properly, it's like this. The most important part is the muscle here, the big Latissimus Dorsi. If I draw it just straight on like this from the back, we've got our scapula, and it'll come bang, make like a W, and it connects down to here if I draw it really simply, okay? And then you've got that, and that's your lats. If you want to show a bit further, the details, you've got the aponeuroses, okay? Now I'll add on another little bonus for this episode, and it's called, I was going to save it for later, but I'll just throw it in now. There's an erectus spinae group. We'll get rid of that. You see this? I'm going to credit Proco, I think, for this image. I found it on Pinterest. That it looks like a Proco skeleton. Maybe it's not, but just to stay safe, I'll credit that to Proco. You've got two at the base of your skull. You've got two of these long muscles, and it's actually a group, and it's called the erectus spinae group. And in drawings, we'll point it out in some examples, but it's just a long group of muscles, I guess, to support the vertebrae. but this will be important a bit later on, especially when you look at old master drawings. You'll see an extra lump there and you'll go, what's that? So that's the erectus spinae group, and these are your lats. Now, hopefully I'm not going too fast for you. Let's move on to another example. I've got that. Okay, so this is from the side, so you can see a bit easier how that lat goes under the armpit and towards the front of your the bicep area, a bit higher on the humerus. So if I'm looking from the front, oops. Okay, if I'm looking at the figure from the front, it's the chest. The rib cage. Let's put a head there. The humerus. The lat would connect. Geez, why didn't that change color? Around, well, maybe a bit higher. And they'd have this cable, all the muscles going all, if you could see through, it would be going through like that and down to the sacrum, okay? But it would come through the front there, attaching to the front of your humerus. So let's just draw this example and start again with the rib cage. And please, everyone, if there's any suggestions, I keep saying this, let me know in the comments if I'm going too fast or if there's something you want me to go into specifically in another video. Please, by all means, suggest it. Okay, from the side on, that lat, I can see a bit of the side of the back. Okay, say you've got your scapula, head of the humerus. Oops. Okay, so the lat from the front there, you can see it's going under. And then the sacrum would be about there. Okay. Then this other part, it's got this rhythm down there. Okay. So it's a very basic muscle, but where the confusion comes in is in around the deltoid and the armpit. From the deltoid down to the armpit, all this area here, especially, can be confusing. So let's get into that. All right, this is a good example. Also, what else confuses it all is this long head of the tricep. It's, if you remember from a previous lesson on the tricep, it connects to a portion of the scapula. So let's break this down and make it easy to understand. Okay. Rib cage. See a bit of the side there. Throw in the vertebrae, and he's turning, this guy's turning to the side. So that's, sacrum would be around here. This would be around what do you call the great trochanter of the femur, but we'll go into that another time. Okay, so we've got the head of the humerus, and I'll bring that out like that. Now, where do you begin? Let's start with the base. So we've got our bones, the head, we'll do the acromion process rather, and the scapula. It's about the size of the head. Okay, we've got that in there. Next, I like to put this on the shelf for some reason. That's where the supraspinatus goes, but it's not such an important muscle to draw. We've got the infraspinatus. There's also a teres minor, but you rarely see it, so don't worry about it. And it would be this little muscle there. Okay, so we've got the infraspinatus. This is where it gets a bit confusing. Now I'll add in the lateral head of the tricep. Let's say the elbow is here. And you can see on the drawing, that's how it shows there. The other portion of the tricep, sorry, this is the lateral head, this is the long head. Lateral head connects to the actual humerus. There's another part of the tricep called the medial head, but it's not so important. You can include it if you want. But go into the tricep video just to get a refresher if things are getting confusing. So what I've drawn is the infraspinatus, the tricep long head. Next, I'm putting in teres major. And remember the teres major, that should go underneath. Made a mistake here. Whoop. Okay, I want to make this a bit smaller. I'm not sure how, but I'll have to figure it out another time. Use the band next. All right, let me tell you quickly. This is where you've got the scapula, the humerus. This is where, or roughly where the tricep long head would connect to the scapula. Okay. And it's underneath. I should have put it in first, actually. So tricep long head, infraspinatus. So the infraspinatus connects to the head of the humerus, and we'll put it there like that. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, underneath, we've got the teres major, and that goes to the front of the humerus bone. So it goes under and to the front. Is that making sense? So I'll put that in, teres major. Next, we have our big lat. And that'll go in. Look how thick that teres major is. I should make it a lot thicker like in the drawing. The lat goes underneath that. And that makes its way to the sacrum area. Remember, we've got the ponderoses there. So that is the layering for that area. And we've forgotten the one bit on top, and I'll do it in another color, is the deltoids. So we remember there's 3 parts to the deltoid. So it's got this sort of tendon that connects to the scapula. That's the rear deltoid. And if you remember, it comes to the front. It attaches to the front of the humerus also. So you've got a lot of attachments to the front of the humerus. You've got the side portion. And you can see a tiny bit of the front portion. And then, so we've got the lats. And delts. And then remember, the trapezius. So that goes to the acromion process and a bit of the front of the collarbone. Sits and rides above on that scapular shelf. And then it covers, from the drawings I see, it covers the lat, okay? Now remember, it connects just below that scapula onto the vertebrae, okay? So that, if you can do that, you've really mastered that difficult area. So if you want to go through that again, just rewind and watch it again. Follow that, these steps here. And if you follow that, then if you know where the insertions and origins are, then you're sweet, okay? What did we talk about last week? Talked about also the serratus magnus. So if you've got your rib cage, remember there was these serratus, you've got the rib cage, and you had like an angle going out to the corners of the rib cage, and there were muscles. Do you remember these muscles that connected to the rib cage? And they were shaped kind of like this. Well, on the back, let me erase some of this. They connect onto the back of the rib cage also. So if I've got that same pose here, you've got your scapula. It's pretty much protrudes from the underneath, remember that? Underneath the scapula, these serratus magnus, and the lat will cover a portion of that, and you'll see these striations like you see here. Okay, the lat will cover a portion of that, and you'll see those striations for the serratus magnus. And then we'll probably go into it next week. They interlock with the muscles of the obliques, and this is the obliques here. But we'll go into that next week. Okay. So we're going to go on to some. Oh yeah, the reason I brought that up also is, so if you've got this group of serratus magnus coming from underneath the scapula to the front of your body, the front of the rib cage. Sometimes you'll see this. I've made it a bit more clearer, but there's a tiny shadow there, and that's what you would see. That's what it's underneath the lat, but it still has quite a bit of volume to express itself with a bit of shadow. Okay, so you could just put it in like an egg like that, and then from the underneath the scapula, and then you'll know where to lay in a tiny bit of shadow. Just gonna go overboard. Okay, now we'll get on to some examples, and it's been about 25 minutes, which is not bad, but I can't rush these lessons too much, otherwise you'll miss out on some important things. Okay, we'll try and dissect this here. So I'll draw an egg, and feel free, guys, to play with either eggs or squares, whichever works best for you. There's schools that are very dogmatic about their methods, but here I want you to do what works for you. Okay, so I can see that, geez, the hip area is really strong. Sacrum would be around here, okay? So we're just drawing the base, our foundations first, okay? Another one, I'll just put a point, and that'll go to his elbow. And I'll just finish that off there like that. He's carrying this huge boulder. Okay. Maybe he's doing some weight training, all day weight training. What other bone are we missing? The scapula. And I see a bit of the base here. And let's begin with that. So what was, okay, first of all, where does the scapula, where does the lats, what we're focusing on, where does that lie? Actually, I'm going to introduce that erector spinae group. So at the base of the skull, and it went all along down to the sacrum, and you can see a portion of it here if you really look close. Okay. And today we're working also on the lat, and the lat, remember, covers the base of the scapula. It does the same thing on the other side. And he's really crunched over, so you can see this lat really flexing. Now, what's this bulge? I'm going to say it's part of the teres major. Okay. And I know how to, well, after teaching you guys that on top of that would be the tricep. And I could just put a volume there just to summarize that area of the tricep, okay? We also know that there's like that ligament that connects the tricep to the elbow. We've got our infraspinatus group that connects to the head of the humerus. Okay. What else do we have? We've got our trap muscles. And I'm not really looking too much at our figure. I'm just going off the knowledge that I know. And that covers the lat. And I should have drawn this in. That's the volume of the leg, and it bends back. So we've got our trap, and then let's cover that. We know we can see a bit of the front portion of the deltoid, the bicep. And there's also this muscle, we'll get into it, muscles of the forearm in the future, but it's a brachioradialis, I think. Anyway, besides that, let's not worry about that. We've got our scapula, and remember our delts cover all of this, and you can see it up here, the shadow of that delt. And it goes towards the front of the humerus. That's the side portion, and this is the front portion. And you can see it's roughly similar, but it's a decent effort. And okay, one last bit was, remember that serratus magnus group. Serratus magnus. So you can see maybe a bit of that over here. Okay. And then you can see, it's funny, this angle, I think it's a bit weird. Maybe there's artistic liberty, but you can see a bit of his pec and also that side, which is unusual, but he's the artist and he's allowed to do what he wants. But when you become pretty good with your anatomy, you can start to scrutinize these things. Let's move on to another example. Okay. So, here we go. Sweet enough. Now, how about I superimpose on this? Let's see what we can get from here. Got the head, vertebrae, chromium process. And it seems to be, that's the base of the scapula, really hunching over. I think that one's going like that. Okay. Sometimes if you're doing your own figures, find there's a rhythm here between the shelves of these scapulas. See how they sort of flow in together? So always think about rhythm in your drawings. And even if the figure you're looking at doesn't have these rhythms, maybe test out putting rhythms in and see if the pose even looks better. Okay, now this looks to me the base of the rib cage. Okay. Are you guys been able to see that? Hopefully you are. Maybe I'll make it a little bit brighter. Now, let's start with the what we did before with the layers. Okay, so let's start with the infraspinatus. Goes to the head would be around here. And then, oh, we started with the tricep, sorry. But let's just keep going. The band of the tricep is the elbow. You can see it's kind of flexed. I don't think it should be, but actually, I think it's because he's pushing that tricep against his leg, so it's pushing it out. And you see the plate that goes to the elbow there. Okay. Now, infraspinatus, we've done that. Teres major, under to the front. We can't see it, it's covered, but we know whereabouts it leads to. We've also got going to the front. We've got our lat. Okay. And that's making its way down to here. Following so far? Remember our delts comes off, the rear delt comes off the scapula, makes its way towards the front. Side delt makes its way towards the front, and it covers that AC acromial process. And you can see the portion of the front delt too that comes off the clavicle. Now, from the base of the skull, we've got our traps. It touches the acromial process and goes, there's another portion that goes to the front clavicle. This, you can see his traps here quite well. And that'll go down like this. Okay. And I don't see too much of that serratus magnus group coming from. If I did put it in, I'll put it around there. I think there's a tiny shadow that I just covered there. And it would give a bit of an extra bulge here. Now I'll indulge you with one last one example. That's our example there. I'll delete that. And finally here, this one, wow, what do we do? Well, let's just bite the bullet and start from the beginning. I'm looking at the rib cage, like so. Okay. So let's throw that in. And why did I show this angle? We're focusing on the back. Well, we need to see how the lat makes its way towards the front. And this area here can be confusing. So let's work through it together. Okay. Again, I'm just sort of not looking too much at the reference, just glancing at it at times. Now, this neck coming out of the rib cage, front rests like that. If I had to draw his neck like a tube, and then I see a portion of his skull back there, front of his face, and I encourage you to use just geometrical shapes to help you figure these things out. Okay. Neck. Oops. No, that's a part of the trap. So if we've got his, I'd say his humerus would be around here. Okay. That's to the elbow. And that a bit far. See how I've got too far from there, but let's leave it. Okay, I'm just working on his right side. Now, if I could see through to the back, the scapula would be rising up to meet the head of the humerus. See if I could see through, okay? Now we also know there's this serratus magnus that meets underneath the scapula there. And from what we learned last week, you can put an angle to the corner of the rib and you'd find where the serratus magnus would meet the linear linear elbow. Is it? Okay, let's finish off this front area. So if the clavicle should be like this. Okay, we remember that we had like a the pec going to the front will be up to here. It would be going like this. And then you had the portion from this sternum going up there too. And look at that nice shape. Okay. You've also got the bicep that you can see that's covering the pec. Now, where is our scapula? I've lost it. Let me put it back in there. Okay. Now, if I was to draw this arm, well, the humerus, the top portion of the arm is a 2x4. I'll draw it like so. So I'm not looking, and I'm going to remember that the tricep, the long head, comes from the scapula. Geez, this bicep was really in the wrong position. It could be the tricep there instead. And you've got another portion of the tricep. Okay. Now, what do we see? We can see this says deltoid, the rear deltoid that comes off from the back of the scapula and makes its way to the front of the humerus. Okay. You can see this jutting out, and that's the base of that's the teres major going to the front. So I think it would go like so. And then there's also the lat coming from the front. and making its way. If I could, okay, this is the base of the rib cage, and say I'm following the front here, and this would be how he's sitting. I'd represent that box like so. Okay. Now, where's the sacrum? Let's draw through the box, figure it out. It's around the middle. So it would be about there. So that lat would be making all the way down, stretching down to the sacrum. Okay. Now, what else have we got? I think that's pretty much it. And the best artists would simplify things. So without having to put in all these details, and I've been trying to do it lately, is just, if you put in that foundation, you can just, at the end of it, oh, this is an important thing, overlaps. So that overlaps that, and that's the pec muscle. And look, you can leave it as is if you wanted to, and just add in shadows to push the form. So that's how I'd represent this. It is a bit confusing, but work on the simple examples, simple poses that you find first, and then slowly get into things like this where you really have to use your brain to figure out what is going on. I'll just put in some quick shadow, and then I'll put in some shadow into that so it really highlights what we've done here. An ugly shadow I'm doing, but never really helps it pop. So guys, I'm gonna wrap this one up. This one is supposed to be pretty easy. I mean, the concept of the lat is simple. The difficult thing is the layering around that armpit and the bottom of where that area where the tricep connects to the scapula, how the infralatus comes out, the teres major, and the lat. So if you go back to the part of the video where I drew it all in order, just practice that for a while, and also look at examples from old masters, superimpose, draw to the side, and always try to study the insertions, origins, so you don't have to copy exactly what you see. Use your knowledge of the origins and insertions of these muscles to create your own versions of what you're looking at. So until next time, happy drawing, keep practicing. It can be frustrating in the beginning, but like with anything, if you do it enough, it'll be ingrained in your brain, and you won't even need to look at these videos anymore, and you'll probably be teaching others. So keep at it, don't give up, and please give me any suggestions that you would think would benefit you guys. So take care. See you next time.